Hey, science peeps, it's Miss CG back again for another installment of our lesson on the moon. This is chapter 1, lesson 6. Something a little different today that I want to show you is that instead of doing all of our activities through Google Classroom, we're still going to be going to Google Classroom, but you're going to click on Google Classroom and you're going to come to, it's going to say at the very top, select the Google Doc at the bottom of the screen titled Chapter 1, Lesson 6, HyperDoc. This is something new I learned today. I'm trying it out. And I've had some students say that they're a little confused because I have a gazillion sites up here. They don't know which ones to select, which ones to pick. So I'm going to hone this down for you. And we're going to be, as often as I can, I'm going to be making these hyperdocs. So right at the bottom, it says Chapter 1, Lesson 6 hyper, and then do, it's hyperdoc. You're going to click on that. And here it's going to give you step by step all the activities that you need to do. And you can scroll down. The links are embedded into the document. And it even gives you some extra things to do at the end. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through using the hyperdoc today. So we're going to start with my walkthrough for all of you video game nerds. I'm included. I use walkthroughs all the time. This is going to be what my YouTube video is going to be, which is what I'm making now. So let's start with number 1. You're going to watch my YouTube walkthrough, and then we're going to complete the activities as we go. So what are those activities? Right here. You're going to complete with me the My Planet Diary, numbers 1 and 2, compare and contrast table, and then the apply it 1 and 2. Okay, so before we start, let's talk a little bit about the moon and some moon myths. So I don't know if you guys know this, but a long time ago, people didn't know much about the moon. The Egyptians, this is Osiris right here, and they said that the god Osiris died and came back to life every day, every month with the moon. Here we have the ancient Chinese goddess Hangou, and they said that she lived forever on the moon. And actually today, still the Chinese, they eat mooncakes in her honor every year in the autumn during the moon festival. The Vikings, they thought that the dark shapes in the moon were a girl and a boy who were kidnapped, and they were kidnapped while they were getting water. And then finally, here we have the ancient or the Native Americans, and they believed that it was bad luck to go hunting when the crescent moon, when it was pointing upward. So, but with that said, we also have a history where for a long time, we've known a lot about the moon. A lot of this knowledge was maybe forgotten over time and remembered. But here we have the Greek philosopher, and I'm going to mutilate his name here, Anaxagoras. Sorry if I said that wrong, but he believed that the moon's light came from the sun, and it does. That's true. That was 2,500 years ago that he believed that, and he talked about this. Down here we have Aristarchus, and he was able to figure out the distance from Earth to the moon 2,200 years ago. Amazing. And then we have this Syrian philosopher, Poseidon, like Poseidon, water. And he said he could explain the effects of the moon on our tides. And that was 2,000 years ago. So these were things that we were noticing thousands of years ago. This handy little contraption, this was a telescope that, or a model, a replica of a telescope that Galileo used. Now, Galileo did not invent the telescope, but he improved on it. So speaking of Galileo, let's go down to our next and our first activity. It's the My Planet Diary, numbers 1 and 2. So the first question says, what conclusions did Galileo draw about the moon? So by figuring out that answer, we have to go look at the text. So in 1609, the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei, now we see a lot of different cultures here. The Syrians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Vikings, the Italians. Lots of different cultures played a role in all of our discoveries in science. So anyway, he used his telescope and he saw something that really amazed him. He saw these wide, dark areas and strange spots and ridges. And we're going to talk about today exactly what those dark areas and ridges are called. So this is exactly what he wrote. This is from his writings in his journals. He said, I have been led to that opinion that I feel sure that the surface of the moon is not perfectly smooth, but that on the contrary, it is, just like the surface of the earth, varied everywhere by high mountains and deep valleys. So in your answer for number one, what conclusions did Galileo draw about the moon? He said that the moon had ridges and valleys, and had its surface was rough and had all kinds of different spots on it. So that's something that you can write over here, very similar to Earth. Now, question number two. By the way, if I'm talking too fast, the beauty of doing a video like this is that you can pause me and remind me anytime you want. All right, so number two, how do you think it would feel to make an observation that no one had ever made before, which what Galileo did? So think about that. How would you feel if you discovered something new? Just like that teenager that I told you guys about a few weeks ago before we left for our remote learning, who discovered a new planet. And I want you to keep this thought in mind, because at the end of this video, I'm going to show you something that you can do, or maybe on our days off, on the weekends and on the down times from this remote learning, that you might be able to help and discover something new on your own. Okay, let's go to the next page right over here. So let's talk about these spots that we see on the moon. So one of the features on the moon is called, I know that looks just like my name, but is not spelled, or it's not pronounced Maria. It is pronounced Maria. So these are the dark, flat areas, and they are actually hardened over lava flows from 3 to 4 billion years ago. So when meteors were hitting the moon, underneath the surface of the moon was lava. And as the meteors hit the moon and cracked its surface, lava would spew out and harden over. And when it hardened over, it made these darker spots. Okay, our next one, craters. Now, the large craters, some of them are hundreds of kilometers across, were caused by meteoroids, by large meteoroids that made big impacts. And the impacts, the craters that we see actually formed before the Maria formed, because evidence has shown that there aren't a lot of meteors or crater marks in the Maria. Here's a video that I want you to watch. It's only a 3-minute video. What are craters and how did they form? So if you go over to your Google Classroom, and you can click on right here, why does the moon have craters? Watch that for 3 minutes and then come on back to me. Okay, hopefully you learned something new and cool about craters. Now let's move on to the next slide, and another one of our words called highlands. And the highlands are these actually tall mountains, literally high lands, and these peaks on the moon's surface. And some of them can be up to 25,000 feet tall. Now, to put that into some perspective, Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, is 29,000 feet tall. So you have these huge Mount Everest type features all over the moon. And imagine walking into that. It's so hard to tell how large they are from where we are. And they cast these large, far shadows. So the surface of the moon, there's a lot of similarities to Earth, but it can be a little scary too if you're not, going on a strange moon like that. Okay, so now let's go to our next activity. We are going to complete a data table. Let's see how similar the Earth and the moon are. So the first one is the density. We're going to find out what is the density of the Earth versus the density of the moon. So I have on here, this is page 36 of your workbook. So we're going to find evidence from our text to fill in our data table. So let's go over here to size and density. So specifically, we're looking for density. So we're going to scan and peruse. I see D, diameter. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. And here we go. Oh, dense. So that's here is the density. So it says, though the Earth has a very dense core, its outer layers are less dense. Okay, so the core of the Earth is dense. The outer layers are less dense. So now the moon's average density is similar to the density of the Earth for its outer layers. So we can go back here to our data table, and we can write down that the core for the Earth is very dense. The outer layers are less dense. And then for the moon, we can write that it is similar to the Earth's outer layers. So in this way, so far, moon and Earth are kind of similar. Okay, let's go over to temperature. What is the temperature like on Earth? Let's start with the Earth. So I have a website up here to help you. I just Google searched Earth temperature ranges. So it says here that the scale ranges from negative 81 degrees Celsius, which is negative 144 degrees Fahrenheit. Freezing. We're talking about Antarctica freezing, winter in Antarctica freezing. And then on Earth, it can go as high as 47 degrees Celsius or 116 degrees Fahrenheit. I've heard higher. I've heard 130, but you know what? That's pretty darn high too. Okay, so we can write those temperatures down in our data table right here for Earth. Now, how about the moon? What is the temperature like on the moon? Do we want to live there? So let's see here. At the moon's equator, right? Equator is always the hottest. The temperatures range from a torrid 130 degrees Celsius. So now I know we're not used to thinking in Celsius, so I have my handy converter here for you. So the temperature of the moon can go up to 130 degrees Celsius. Now look at the Fahrenheit, 266 degrees Fahrenheit. Now think about what's the boiling point of water on Earth. The boiling point of water on Earth is 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So at its hottest, the moon is above boiling on Earth. So not very good for humans at all. All right, so we can write that down for our high temperatures. And now how about our low temperatures? How cold does it get? It gets negative 170 degrees Celsius at night. So again, let's put this into some perspective. Negative 170 degrees Celsius, which means negative 274 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's no way that we'll ever be able to survive that unless we have some kind of habitat, a heated, a cooled habitat to help us survive on the moon. So you can go ahead and put those numbers here. Now, how about atmosphere? Why, there's a reason why it gets so hot and cold on the moon and why temperatures are within a certain range on the Earth. So let's take a look at that. We're going to go back to temperature because that information is here for you. And it says right here, temperatures vary so much because the moon does not have an atmosphere. So that's the whole reason. Our atmosphere actually holds in the heat for us and keeps it warm for us, even though I know it gets really cold in some places. So if you go back to our graph, atmosphere, well, the moon has none, and the Earth, well, we have an atmosphere. It's made of lots of different gases. So it's a thick atmosphere with lots of different gases. I mean, we breathe in oxygen from our air, but that is by far not the only gas in our air. There's nitrogen. There's all other kinds of different elements in the air besides oxygen. But our lungs just take in that oxygen. Okay, so the final one is water. And water is that factor that you always look for when you want to colonize another planet. Do they have water? Because you can always make a habitat. We've had the biospheres that we've tried on Earth in the experiments, but water is something we can't do without. So, what is the water situation? We're still on page 36. So, it says in 2009, scientists using data from several space probes, we have probes on the moon right now, determined that a thin layer of water exists in the moon's soil. Well, the total amount is small, but still, there's water there. So there's some room there for us to work with. So here in your data table, you're going to write a very small amount for the moon in the soil. Now compare that to the Earth. Well, we have water everywhere. We have water in the air right now. We have water in solid, in liquid, in gas form, all over the place. And let's say we're in a pinch. Let's say you're somewhere where you have no fresh water. If you're lucky enough to have a distiller, okay, like on Gilligan's Island, the professor probably has this, you can actually get salt water, because we can't drink salt water because the salt will dehydrate you. It will do the opposite of what you would hope water would do. And you can actually boil water. And in this distiller, the water, when it reaches boiling point, it becomes a gas, so it evaporates up. And when it gets far enough from the flame, it becomes droplets, it condenses. And those droplets of water will drip down the tube and down in here. And once it's completely cooled, now you have pure, fresh water to drink. And what's left behind is salt. So right now you made fresh water from the ocean salt water. So I thought that was a fun and interesting thing that you could do. Okay, next activity, the apply it. So let's say we are going to go to another planet, to the moon, to Mars, to wherever. You don't want to go to Venus. Trust me, too hot. So it says on the packing list to the right here, list 5 items you would need on the moon. So think about on Earth. What are the basic things you need for life? You need food, you need water, you need shelter. Bam, 1, 2, 3. Food, water, shelter. Okay. So what else do you think you might need on, if you went, let's say, to the moon, since we're talking about the moon? So if you ever see these pictures of the astronauts on the moon, and take a look at this astronaut's headgear, it's reflecting back. And if you ever notice when people wear sunglasses, you can see the reflection coming back at you. It is so bright because of no atmosphere on the moon. You would definitely need sunglasses, something to protect your eyes. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to see. So that's another important thing for you to put on your list, sunglasses. And then finally, besides some kind of shelter, okay, which shelter could be clothing, okay, it could be a habitat of some kind. What else does the moon not have that Earth has? Is that a hint? Oxygen. So we definitely would need to bring oxygen with us to another planet if they did not have an atmosphere. So here's our challenge. List 2 items that you could not use on the moon, and why would they not work? So let's think. If you go to the moon, what will we not be able to use? So anyone ever been camping? When you go camping, we have marshmallows, and what do we do with them? You roast them. Can you make a fire on the moon? And the answer is no, because fire needs oxygen to burn. Once the oxygen's all gone, fire will go out. So we definitely can't have any campfires on the moon, sorry. And then the other thing is, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot use any kind of electricity, so no blow drying that hair and making it look pretty when you're on the moon, because there's 0 electricity on the moon. So anything, your cell phones, forget that. Unless they're charged and they can work for like hundreds of days without a charge, no, nothing electrical we can bring with us to the moon. Okay, no electricity. All right, so let's move on. There's a really cool video. This is one of my favorite videos in my favorite series. So if you would like to go to the Crash Course Astronomy back to our Google Classroom, And it's this bottom link here. It's a 9-minute video, not too long, not too short, telling you a lot of great details about the moon. Take a break from listening to me for a minute and then come on back and we'll finish up our walkthrough. All right, so hopefully you learned a lot of great things from that video. I want to go back here to our hyperdoc. Okay, so far we have completed the workbook activities that are here. Okay, let's move down here. And the next activity I would like for you to do, it says, how did the moon form? So there are 4 major theories on how the moon formed. I want you to do the research. I want you to try to see for yourself what are those major theories. One of them is what scientists believe to be true today, and you'll find that out as you read. So you have a choice of reading 2 of these 3 articles, okay? And then after you've read, and they're not long, I want you to watch this very short video. It's like a minute and a half, this video. After you read 2 of the 3, pick any 2, and then this video, I want you to complete this Google form. If you click this link here, and that's going to be your individual practice grade for the day. So the question is, Ms. CG, why are you giving me so many things to read and look at? So I have a little tiny note down here, and it says, it's important to get information from multiple sources. Because if you have multiple sources and they're all saying similar things, that means that that information is accurate. It's correct. It's true. If you are reading and you looked at 3 different sources and one of your sources said, the moon formed because somebody had a hunk of cheese and put it up there, and somebody eats the cheese every month and then it grows back, or they bake it again. And then all of your other sources say nothing at all like that, then you know that that source that's talking about the cheese is incorrect. Okay, so this is just even in general when you go do any kind of reading for any subject and you look at multiple sources. If they're all saying about the same thing, you're good to go. So anyway, that's why I have you look at multiple sources. It's not because I'm trying to torture you. All right, so complete that activity. Once you're done, come on down here. We will have a quiz later on this week, so I want you to study for your vocab quiz using your Quizlet link. And then if you're still not sick of learning about the moon, I have some really, really cool resources for you. These are optional. You do not have to do them, and you can look at them at any time you want. Tonight, later this weekend, this hyperdoc will be up here. I'm not taking it down. So this first one is from the NASA website, and you get to see some really close-up pictures of the moon, what different astronauts, where they explored, different rovers that we have right now on the moon or past ones and what they found. Ever been to Google Earth? Well, there's something called Google Moon. So you can go there and explore the moon too. And finally, at the beginning of this video, I said, how would you feel? That was one of our questions from the My Planet Diary. How would you feel if you discovered something new like Galileo? Well, if you go to this article here, it's actually going to invite you while you're sitting at home doing remote learning, if you're bored and need a break between your classwork, to go and explore things, because scientists are always looking for people to explore and find new things. There's something about counting penguins, to help them count penguins on Earth, about looking into space and maybe finding new space objects and making a new discovery. So this is a really cool article for you to look at if you yourself want to try to make some new discoveries on your own, just like Galileo. Okay, well, that's all I have for you today. I hope that I helped you. Again, if you have any questions, email me or send me some messages through Google Classroom. And I hope that you found this hyperdoc a little more useful. I know I sent you back once or twice to Google Classroom to click on a couple of things. I'll try to put them in my hyperdocs more. This was my first attempt at a hyperdoc. And other than that, I hope you learned something. That's it. CG out.